Good, Janani. I'm very happy to be speaking with you today. And I'm very grateful that you have agreed to contribute the next, 30, 45 minutes of our time together to empower a lot more leaders. So I'm
My
grateful for
pleasure
that.
too.
Yeah, and I very interestingly, when anybody looks at your profile, we see a lot of things. Of course, one, you're the HR leader for Quantela. Then you've also been recognized by a number of platforms like the business world for 40 under 40. There are other things that I see around World HRD Congress. Then there's also the other aspect of you, which is being a musician, a veena player, a yoga enthusiast. A lot of different experiences shape up your personality and your character. So
Yes,
I'm looking forward to seeing how all of that can translate into some of the insights that you are able to share with our audiences, Janani.
sure, absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So, one of the first things that I wanted to focus on in our conversation is around the business trends. And you must be observing a lot of people from that aspect of the landscape of the business world changing. So, which is like you hear words like the great resignation, the quiet quitting, there's a lot of the aspects of burnout, and all of these things were there earlier as well, but now today it has become all the more prominent. So being a HR leader and and someone who networks with the business and partners with the business and delivers results, what are some insights you can throw on this topic for us, Janani?
Sure. So, Shripriya, these things, like you rightly pointed out, did exist earlier as well.
Correct.
But they probably existed in a very smaller magnitude.
Okay.
If you look at it, much before, there were people who said, I will do a 9 to 5 job and then rest of the time is mine, the way I would like to use it for my personal aspects or for my passions or whatever that is.
Correct.
And then there came an era where every organization was saying we will be rating people for their performance over and above the set goals, right? And at this point of time, suddenly the norm started shifting. People had to do more, so they even keep their jobs. And then there is also a lot of peer pressure that they were going through at that point of time. Then came COVID and then hit the world. Just made people sit back, reflect, and then think about what's really important for them.
Correct.
While that happened, I think one more thing happened very silently. That is a number of new technologies coming in and then just changing how work gets done.
Correct.
Now, this did leave a psychological impact on people. And my own reading of this entire concept is what we are seeing as quiet quitting or career cushioning are all surface level issues. It's like me going to the doctor and saying I have a headache, but then maybe I have an issue in my stomach. Maybe I have something else somewhere, right? Symptomatically, something else appears outside. So, to me, if you ask, these are just symptomatic issues that are emerging at the surface level. The deeper issues are I want to be more purposeful in what I'm doing, I want to stay relevant. I want to be able to have the ability to earn for me and my family and have an identity for myself in the long term. I think these issues were not very prevalent earlier, but that's like the larger big picture that we will need to start addressing right now. And uh, while these are the deeper issues, the way they are emerging is, okay, I think I need to learn more, and therefore I want to create more time. Where will I create the time? I have the same 24 hours. And therefore, let me just do whatever it takes to keep my job, but I will start allocating time for learning. Correct. So that's how, if you see, quiet quitting is like, okay, I'll do what it takes for the job. And then career cushioning is like, I will start thinking about a future that I want to create and I'll start investing time and money in that. So I think that's how it's all emerging.
Correct, correct, correct. What I'm hearing from you is the word purpose orientation, and people want to have diversity in their lives. At one point in time, they got completely into their roles, and their actually work was taking a lot of their life as well. So right now, what you're sharing is the fact that people are looking at ensuring that they have a more fulfilling future rather than just living in the present, right?
Yes, that's right.
Correct. Now, how should organizations, I mean, of course, there's one side where we say multi-generational workforces, and you have the zillennials and the millennials also started this drive to say, hey, there needs to be a little bit more purpose in life because they had a little bit more ability to, spend more time exploring rather than having financial pressures, etc. So the generation that is now getting more into the workforce has some of these dimensions or some of these characteristics as their life stating requirements. Now, how should organizations balance this? Because you'll have one side where there are people who are still focused on putting their best and going the traditional way, and then you're having the infusion of this different generations into the workforce. But now if should we understand that now even the larger ambit of everybody wants to have that purpose, everybody wants to make it meaningful, or is it still only this particular generation?
I don't believe it is generational.
Okay.
It's just it just starts emerging at different points in points of life for people.
Correct.
Earlier, if you see, people used to have 30 years, same organization, same kind of career, to maybe when someone like me started working, people were seeing these 3, 4 years, 5 years in an organization. And now, if people stay for 18 months to 2 years in an organization, then we are grateful. So there is this transformation that's happening.
Correct.
If you look at it, in the earlier scheme of things, when people had 30 years of career, after 15 years or so, they started looking for meaning. They started searching for their purpose because life stages also moved along. But they were probably looking for some of those outside of work. A few of them were trying to do search for them in work. But life has changed so much that in a 24-hour day, people end up spending over 12 hours in their work. Though we say it's 8-hour work, 9-hour work,
Right.
It's never that nowadays. And then we are also globally networked. So you're in a country, I'm in a different country, and we both are speaking. Technology has made some of these capabilities available. So if you look at it, there is one aspect that I wanted to call out before I converge all of these. The other aspect is about the financial need and the need for finances in life. That itself has transformed. When my parents were working, when I was growing up, I know that they had to earn to make ends meet. When I started working, I know I have to earn to secure a future. But when my daughter is going to work, she knows she already has a secured future. So if you look at it, in Maslow's hierarchy, you may be familiar with it, the lowest of social needs, security needs, all of those, this generation would have already crossed, and then they are looking at meaning, self-esteem and everything much early on. And then you have these generations that are in 40s and 50s who are also there. So in fact, I would say that it is easier for organizations to start looking at these aspects while devising new programs and policies. On the contrary, organizations are actually looking at how do I retain paying money benefits, and then how do I have programs where I can enhance my brand. You see, there is this gap that's getting created. People wanting something, organizations giving something, and then the gap is just getting wider. So there has to be some level of focused effort because this is a common phenomenon that's emerging quite clearly in the last couple of years at least.
Correct. Yeah, right. I mean, these actually what you're saying is right, where people are all in similar levels, but only thing is they're, I mean, gen or age wise, they could be in different places, but they're almost in trying to access the similar needs at this point in time.
Yes.
Well said, Janani. also takes me to the other dimension around the talent war that we hear, that we always face. I mean, and today there's a lot more talent available in the market, but we still hear, when I speak to HR leaders, we still hear the word saying that we don't get the right talent in our organizations. It's taking us time. I mean, especially when you're looking at business-oriented talent in sales, etc., where it takes a lot more time for people to start delivering results. So why does this gap exist, Janani?
There are multiple reasons. Number one is the skills half-life is actually shrinking. It has shrunk from 15 years to 5 years. So if you see, I mean, if I have to give you an example, I think around 2018 timeframe, in the US, there were about 7.5 million jobs around sales, IT, HR, and few other functions that were posted. There were, on an average, 18 skills required to perform these jobs.
Okay.
Fast forward in 2021, again, same set of jobs were posted. Now, the number of skills that were required were 21. You could think it's just only 3, but that's not the truth. Half of the 18 skills of the year 2018 were not relevant, which means in 2021, somebody who had to perform similar jobs had to learn 12 new skills to perform the job that existed just 3 years ago.
Correct.
So it's about the rampant pace of the change in skills and our ability to cope up with those skills.
Correct.
Our ability to anticipate which skill is going to come up tomorrow and where should one invest in as well, right? So number of these elements are playing together to make it a very strong case that we are not able to find the right talent right now, because what's needed itself is emerging very quickly. And then who we need is unknown. Or we know, but then we have our past baggage saying, I want 80% fitment, 90% fitment. I think organizations, leaders will have to flex saying, okay, I'm okay with a 40, 50% fitment. Rest of it, I'm willing to invest and train, because there's just no option. You have only so many people available, right? You have people, but so many right fits available. There is a serious change in the supply demand equation, and that's causing this.
Correct. But and so one needs to be agile to know how to keep upskilling, what to learn on, and keep up with that to ensure that you stay relevant. That's what it's about, staying relevant and creating value to the ecosystems that you serve. Now, how should one learn? How do you learn, Janani, and who is your role model to say, hey, this is somebody whom I look up to see the way that they have charted their path? Is there some role model for you?
Yeah, I have a lot of role models actually. Maybe I will start it from home. Both my parents, my father is 70 and my mom is in her late 60s. Both of them are attending at least 2 to 3 varieties of classes at this age. So learning is very much integral at home for me. Growing up, I've seen both of them learning one thing or the other. And now I'm making sure my daughter is also seeing the same.
Wonderful.
At least for the last 6 years, I've been formally learning one thing or the other. It need not be necessarily HR only. It was music sometime, music continues to stay. I'm continuing to learn and I'm teaching in the weekend. So if you see, even if I'm teaching in the weekend, right, I'm learning to become a better teacher. Because there I'm dealing with a totally different set of population with whom I do not interact on a day-to-day basis by virtue of my job. Similarly, I continue to do at least one certification a year. All of this is just to make sure my learning muscles are kept active. And therefore, anytime anything needed, I can learn quickly. I'm totally shameless to tell my junior team members or some of my senior team members also that I'm unaware of this, teach me, I will learn and I will do. Or I can say, I just don't know this part, I'm totally counting on you. So you take care of it. I think those have been my ways to cope up with this. I have several role models in the industry. It may be unfair for me to just point out one person, but I have several role models, and I think I learn one thing or the other from everyone and try to emulate and become a better person on an everyday basis.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, personally, I've seen you share a number of stories in LinkedIn, and I think that's what motivated each other to connect. I think that was the how I connected with you in LinkedIn. So, how did you? I see some of the things are from your learnings, which you share as stories. So, what's that? How did you create that habit of storytelling, Janani?
Um, so storytelling and creating stories, they all have started much early on in my life. As a student, as a child, I used to look at things with my own lens. At class 6 or 7, I started writing articles for my school, and then growing up in college, I used to be an editor for the college magazine. I used to do those things because I just used to write and love writing. I later started seeing that that was one of my fundamental ways of creative expression.
Okay.
So I have like some 8 notebooks at home for different things. I have different notebooks. I'm a writing person. It helps me in a number of ways. Therefore, at some stage, I thought, okay, when it's helped, my reflections are helping me so much, then why not I write about it more often in the way that's consumable by people.
Correct.
So some people benefit out of it, right? That's how my journey of writing snippets and all started few years ago. But I have been writing for a long time. That's what I must say. An additional aspect I would call out is I try to look at anything from an everyday lens, because life happens every day. We just
Correct.
think of big moments of failures or successes, but then everyday lens is important. And then you can take inspiration from anything. It could be a bird flying or a child speaking, or it could be a leader speaking on stage, or it could be somebody doing their job extraordinarily well. I find inspiration in everything, and I try to write about all of these.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, it's a great thing that you said is about saying it's writing is a way of creatively expressing who you are, right, and what you have gained. So, very well said, Janani. Now, it brings me to that aspect of every professional or individual these days are considered a brand. So creating a brand, and now everybody's become vocal about it as well, and organizations investing heavily on their talent to build their executive presence, etc. It's become like the buzzword now. And you are you are considered as one of the influencers in LinkedIn with all the recognitions that you have earned. What is your suggestion or recommendation to how professionals should build this in a deliberate manner, and how should they amplify their voices? What are your thoughts around that, Janani?
Sure. It's a very important question that we will need to ponder upon in this age and time. Few years back, I attended an author's workshop. As I told you earlier, I have this inclination to write from childhood. So at some stage, yes, I will certainly look to become an author. So at that point of time, I attended that. That's when I had a big realization that earlier authors used to just pen a book and then give it away, and somebody used to publish. They used to get some royalty from that.
Correct.
But then authors were not anymore authors only. They had to be marketing people for themselves.
Correct.
And they had to have a strategy. It's not about just selling the book, but it's selling an idea, isn't it? What's more encouraging for somebody to feel motivated if their idea is reaching so many people, and therefore it sells more, right? So that's when I realized that it's not enough for anybody to be the best in their work. Either you need to have somebody talk for yourself, which may be fewer in number, where very few people may do that, or you have to talk for yourself. So then comes, what do you talk about yourself? Right? So I think one has to ask ourselves, saying, what do I want to be known for? Which part of me should be known to the world and can serve the world? Which platform am I using? Right? It could be a completely different content if I'm posting something on Instagram versus LinkedIn. So I have to be mindful about which platform am I using, and what should be my content, because there is a digital survey that goes on behind before calling anybody for speaking or writing or for a different opportunity also, right?
Correct.
So it is important. Everybody is a brand in that way. So to your question on brand, what is the brand that one wants to be known for? And what are series of steps that they should take to make sure through their body of work that brand emulates is the one line answer I would give.
Correct, correct, correct. But there is always this knowing and doing gap. People know what they need to do, but they don't get to do it. There are, of course, we can call it some fears, hesitations, self-limiting beliefs on one side. And then there's this other facet about how people will judge them, etc. So all of that is what people, so that leads to a lot of people who I look at as introverted experts, because they're not visible there, but there are so many experts than just the vocal ones. Now, how should people address this to build a brand? I mean, is there something that you would say which will motivate them or help them think beyond their hesitations, Janani?
Yeah, it's a very pertinent question, and personally, I have also struggled through this at some stage. You know, there is this thinking of what will people think about me if I'm going to write this?
Correct.
In that thought, many good thoughts don't come out at all.
Correct.
Or the other extreme is people will like this and therefore I will write on this. But it's absolutely misaligned to me as a person, right? I think people go through an ambivalence between this extreme to that extreme. And it's a tough one to crack. I'll tell you what I did several years back when I started writing. One of my mentors who also writes poems, like I also write poems and he also writes. So we were sharing something. And one particular post, he said, "Hey, I don't think you wrote for yourself, you wrote for others." I said, "How did you spot it?" He said, "I'm able to understand from the style and maybe call it a writer's knowledge." He could understand that. And then that left me reflecting, saying, okay, why did I write this? For whom did I write this? And then I just paused and said, anything that I write will first be for me, anything that I can relate to from within. And then, even if it is hitting only 4 people's mind, it's okay. If 100 people are able to relate to it, it's okay. Depending on whichever people like and their network gets to view the post. Or, it could even be speaking, right? Like I'll come to speaking in a minute. So writing, I think I cracked it that way. Therefore, yes, while you will need to have some level of consistency, let's say once in 2 weeks, you will post something. If that's the pattern that one has, there has to be that consistency, but it should not be unnatural or falsely made with the pressure of, I need to post something. This is something I actually follow. So sometimes if it's once in 3 weeks, I'm okay. Sometimes 1 month, I don't want to write content that I will not like reading. So you say it's that way. Now, when it comes to speaking, I think a lot of people go through this public speaking fear, or especially when COVID happened and everything had to move virtually. A lot of people did not know how to conduct themselves in front of a camera. People used to generate enthusiasm with the number of people in the room. Like I used to do a lot of training facilitation. I had to also shift to online. So it did take some energy, but it's not just about that. It's about when you get onto the stage, the moment a person starts thinking about, okay, what is this person thinking about me? What is that person judging about me? We are completely shifting our focus from what needs to be delivered and how we are delivering to what others are thinking, which we have absolutely no control on. So it's a moment of pause that we will need to take, saying what's in my control versus what's not in my control. What's in my control is, yes, when I'm on the stage, I own the stage, right? And if I'm the owner of the stage, I'm going to own my content. I'm going to own my delivery. If people are able to relate to it, fantastic. If they're not, I will learn. I think that's the attitude with which we should go. Because we can't really control what people may think about us while we are speaking. Actually speaking, people don't think much. because everybody has their own battles that they are grappling with. In this stage, we have to also think, what is it that the audience want? Why are they even there in the room? And therefore pivot the way you're talking. So you're focused on what you're talking, but you're also focusing the content on what's helpful for the people that are listening. So these are ways I follow. So it's relevant to people.
Absolutely good. I mean, thanks for sharing your personal experiences, Janani. And that's the best we can stand for, right? Because there's so many different ways to overcome things, but we'll have to devise a plan and or what works for us and what we want to, what we want others to actually understand and learn. And it's about co-creation there. It's not just about you in isolation. It's about you understanding what is relevant for your audience and being able to have the ability. And I think somewhere you'll have to nurture yourself to have the ability to do it, because there's always the critical element of what others will think. How will I stand out in front of others? Or if somebody else has done it really well earlier, how can I match up to that, right? Those are all pressures that we face, but just letting go and doing, and as you rightly said, nobody really cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, Janani, I want to ask something that struck me in this juncture is inner drive. Sometimes it's like when we say between merit and success, it's something that a person has as an inner drive to achieve. And mostly it is, you can't blame it on the external world. It's your own drive that helped you to achieve something, or how you built your career, or how you go towards achieving something that is very important for you. Now, how should women leaders or women professionals look at creating this inner drive? The reason I'm asking women professionals is the fact that a lot of women, you see a lot of women entering the workforce, then we've always talked about this tapering down, and there are opportunities where they move out of the workforces, things like that. Now, what will have that what inner drive within them to carry their careers and become leaders whom they truly deserve to be? Some of them who've been fantastic when they entered, but they may have left. Of course, it's not that they've missed or not done anything useful in their lives, but how should somebody nurture the drive to go and get the way ahead?
So I would say, first of all, that intention has to exist in people. It depends on what individuals want to make out of their life, right?
Correct.
I have found that growing up, if women have seen role models in their families or around them, it certainly helps them stay balanced in tough situations.
Correct.
And just stay put and not give up and leave the race. So that's number one I've seen. Number two is, in the initial years of one's career, if there are mentors that have looked at these women for their talent and helped them get nurtured, these are two factors I think have strong influence on how women can shape their careers. Many times what happens is, by virtue of family responsibilities or domestic responsibilities, childcare needs, somebody has to do that, because that's also very important. Absolutely. The next generation has to be raised. So most times women take that option, saying, okay, I will maybe pause my career for a few years and then I will do something to make sure the other aspects of life are met. But if their heart is lying in building a career in corporate or in anything else, I think they have to have that eye on that on a daily basis, even if they are doing something else that requires attention. Maybe they could do something in skill building. Maybe they could do something in continuing that art. Maybe let's say if I want to be an artist, or I was an artist earlier and right now I'm on a break, I still take my canvas and paint a little bit. Maybe turn out one painting per week or per month, but have my creations, at least have 12 creations in a year. So have that kind of simple targets possibly during a time when they are busy with managing other responsibilities.
Correct.
And after a certain point of time, they possibly get to mainstream and say, okay, now I'm going to have my engine running. At this point of time, I think women should ask for help where needed. They should, like, I have been blessed by a number of people, I must say. I've asked for help very generously, and people have been more than generous to help me. So I think it's also another very female characteristic of being apprehensive, hesitant to ask for help. I think that's another thing we have to recognize, seek help. Sometimes I've sought help from my 8-year-old daughter, saying, I have this important call, I want absolute silence. Can you make sure this is taken care of? And she has helped me. So with our ecosystem helping and we asking for that help, I think such things are possible. I don't know if I clearly responded to your question, but
yes, it's. I think it'll string the elements that you're talking about are all important to string this thing about keeping that drive and going that way forward. And if you want certain things, I think it's about having that clarity of purpose.
Yes.
I think that would be kind of very critical to know what is it that I want to do and keep that going.
Yeah, so maybe I will just take a couple of more points to respond to this, because clarity in terms of the drive is what you had asked initially, if I recall. So number one, I think every day people can take time, male or female, can take time to just ask, what is it that I'm great at? Where do I want to go? And how can I get there? My situation today can be anything, but then how do I make sure I have that clarity in my mind first, because everything happens twice, once inside our minds, and second time it happens outside. So how can I make sure I'm able to see through where I want to be much before inside my mind is a very important aspect that people will need to consider, and therefore have daily reminders of asking, what is it that I'm great at? How can I get great at these three things if I want to get to wherever I want to get? And have small action plans working towards a future that they will want to build. I think that way it certainly helps to keep the inner drive alive.
How did you increase the deservability in your own eyes, Janani?
This is actually a tough one. I think everyone goes through transition phases when we are an individual contributor to becoming a manager, from manager to a leader. And then in leadership, there are multiple levels again. It's not about the literal levels of titles and designations, but there is a certain level of seniority that you bring in, experience and maturity that you bring in, right? So number one, it is about how others are treating you. Number two is how you create your positioning rightly. I think that's what I would say from a deservability standpoint, right? For instance, many times I've found myself and many others also, we believe in ourselves lesser than what others might believe in us. There are some people who will say, hey, I think you can do it, just go do it. And then I'm like, oh, really? Can I do it? I'm not sure. I think people go through that quite a bit, and that itself brings down deservability. And bringing in the factor of gender again, I think women typically tend to see 100% fitment of something before they go for it. Let's say you're applying for a job, you could say, okay, will I fit 80% and beyond? Only then I'll even apply for the job. And it's a very female way of thinking, and I think that itself is a good acknowledgement to say, okay, if that's the way I'm naturally made, then how should I flex myself, alter myself, so that I don't lose out on opportunities that I might actually deserve. So one is acknowledgement of the factor. Next is to say, okay, there are 3-4 people around me telling me that I might be able to do it. Then pause and say, am I capable? What are areas where I think I should be working more hard on? And then finally saying, I'm going to go with a leap of faith, and then say, I'm going to pick up this opportunity and see how it works. I think that's the way to increase deservability. Go show up in multiple places. to learn from other role models, male or female, right? You just learn from that and then talk to people who will energize you. I think that's also another thing I have tried. Finally, I do a lot of affirmations to myself in a future state, right? Like whatever I want in future state, I write as if it's already there in the present. I think those things certainly help because subconsciously it starts tuning me to move towards the future that I want to create for myself. So these are ways I have tried to work on deservability for myself.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, it's good to hear each person has a journey in that, and I'm very happy that you shared some of the very important aspects, Janani. Thank you. And now there's another question that always pops up in my head especially when we're talking about women. And oftentimes women tend to be more critically judgmental. And there are some reports, I'm not sure which one right now, but I've heard that at one point in time, women did not like reporting to women managers. It perhaps came from being extremely critical or being extremely observant about things, because we tend to catch things faster. Our observation around our house is very, very, very critical, and then our intuition is also high. So sometimes I don't know. I'm just thinking or talking aloud here to say some of those traits could have caused us to become more critically judgmental. Now, how should we move to be more compassionately curious?
In my career, at least, I have not seen women saying, I'll not want to report to a woman.
Okay.
And I have personally worked with both male and female managers, and I've had a good experience in both sides. So there is nothing about gender in this. And then to your question on compassionately curious, I think women are made very compassionate already by nature. Correct. So there is compassion already inbuilt in us. Curiosity is a human trait. I don't think there is a gender differentiation for curiosity. Today, you talk to any child, invariable of the gender that they are, they are going to display curiosity. I think growing up, we just shed some of those, or we just put things around curiosity and forget that we had that trait in us. So, so I think it's fundamentally a bias that we may hold against a particular gender, whether it's male or female, saying this particular gender may be like this. It's a stereotypical bias, and maybe one has to work on it to get over it so that they're able to be their best self. That's what I would say.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now it leads me to say, now that when you say women are by inherently compassionate, and that kind of makes me think to focus on the feminine leadership aspect, Janani. So each individual has the masculine and feminine, and it's right not to look at gender as male and female, but to say how can the masculine and the feminine play well to, to help people become better leaders, or to, serve the societies that you are in. Now, what inherent feminine qualities, right, are under-leveraged by you in your quest to being where you are today, Janani?
So researchers call out certain traits of women leaders versus male leaders, or feminine leadership qualities versus masculine leadership qualities. But again, there could be differences between one person to another. Growing up, we were two sisters. We are two sisters, me and my sister, and I do not have a male comparison at all at home. We were raised as independent kids. We were raised as people who can talk our minds out and talk through fears as well. So that environment was provided. So from that standpoint, I did not even have the comprehension of the fact that there could be a lot of difference between the way males and females could be treated at workplace, more so at a leadership level as well. It could have expressions in different ways. I did not know that actually until I at least had like 10 years of career. But after that, I started seeing that there are certain traits that are appreciated and certain traits that are not appreciated. Like in a similar situation, there is a male and female. A male says, no, I think this cannot be done. This is what is okay. And the same thing is told by a female in the same way is not very well received if it's a female who's saying that versus a male saying that, because we have inherently felt that females are supposed to be softer versus males can be assertive, right? I think there is this expansion of thought process that people will also have to go through, saying a leader is a leader invariable of the gender.
Correct.
And a leadership quality is a quality that's needed. And yeah, there may be traits that females could have, or a feminine leadership quality could possess in terms of emotionally aware, being naturally inclusive, being caring and compassionate. These could be feminine characteristics, but I've seen these in some of the male leaders that I have worked with too. And I have seen women who are quite assertive, and they are praised also, which are traditionally male leadership characteristics. First of all, do we even have enough data or subset to say these are female leadership characteristics? Because we had only male leaders for a long time. Even right now, if you see, let's take HR as a profession. Over 60% of HR professionals today are women only. But then you go to the top, there are still only very few, because they're still grappling with, I need to manage these things back home. There's nobody to look after my child. You know, all of that, because somebody has to do that as well. It's not because of lack of capability that they're not coming out, or lack of leadership traits, so to say. It's more about the aspects that they need to manage beyond work as well. And nowadays, I think that's also changing. There are a lot of male leaders or male members that are taking familial responsibilities too.
Correct.
Maybe a little long drawn answer, but
no, I mean, it's important. So it's primarily, it's the fundamental question itself, what is masculine and feminine, right? It's just the way we make a change or way we conduct ourselves. It need not be categorized or male or female doing something, or it's not even masculine or feminine in that way. Each person has a certain role to play, and how we bring it about in the best possible manner to, I would say it's about getting that consensus from the environment around you, right? So it's that's really critical. Good. I mean, I want to ask you one question, Janani. It's like, if you have become a leader, you're the HR leader for your organization. So what is one actionable change that you have done in your life to reach your goals effortlessly or effectively?
Effortlessly can never be an answer. I think there's a lot of effort that goes on an everyday basis. I think I seriously invested on personal development. I continue to invest, and I think that's the way my life will be, at least for the foreseeable future. I know that's how it's going to be. About a couple of years back, I started waking up before 5 a.m. and that made a lot of difference. Number two, I'm into yoga, meditation. Yeah, I got certified as a yoga instructor, but I use yoga for my own alignment, centeredness within myself, and to take care of my whole self, right? And that certainly helps me a lot in the way I'm able to conduct myself in different situations. So that's another thing. Number three, I continue to learn every day, like a student who's preparing for exams. My daughter actually jokes sometimes saying, Amma, you're always studying as if you're studying for exam. But I think in the last 2 years, at least, there is abundance of materials that we have. And there is this constant feeling of, I think I have this to complete in the to-do list, in terms of just reading and becoming aware as well. So I think these are some fundamental changes I did. A couple of more things is I started focusing on making a difference. I realized after a lot of reflection that making a difference is a fundamental value I have. And that's just finding expression in my writing or in my speaking or mentoring people, or now I've embarked into coaching as another leg. So that's another aspect, right? So all of this is, I want to make a difference to people's life to find their best selves.
Correct.
It could be a line of statement that I'm writing somewhere and it's inspiring somebody to find their best self on that particular day. Or it could be continuous conversations with me that could help them to become a better person. So these are some of the aspects I'm able to immediately think of.
Very well said, Janani. A couple of final questions that I have for you is, from your vantage point, how should leaders create fearless organizations? Because we have concepts like psychological safety, a lot of these things gaining importance in the way managers treat their team members and the way they nurture the organization itself. So how should leaders create fearless organizations, and how is that even possible?
Leaders should fundamentally have certain value systems, or organizational culture and values should start encouraging people to take risks to a certain level, obviously, to be bold, to be courageous, to speak their minds. And there has to be aspects around learning and agility as well, because everything is very fast changing, right? So let's say I'm making a mistake, my learnability is more, then I learn better, and therefore I'm agile. You see, all of these are interrelated. And with all of this, if there is drive for results as well, which is ultimately required for organizations to exist, then I think people will be able to deliver these as part of how they live in organizations. For that, fundamentally, leaders should have these as part of their value. In fact, in our organization, we have all of these as part of our values. And we walk the talk. That's the second, right? Just be vulnerable to say, hey, I committed this mistake, folks. I don't know. This was my judgment. I don't know why this happened, but this is the reason why I took this decision at that time. To say, okay, this is not a place where you're going to get penalized for making a mistake when you tried something new. Obviously, if it is very expensive, then the repercussions are different. But on a day-to-day basis, when you're trying to make enhancements, when you're trying to change something, there could be certain mistakes that can happen. And how we are able to be vulnerable in front of the team, I think that's another important aspect. Walk the talk, like just don't have these laid out, but showcase in your day-to-day actions as well. I think these are important to create a fearless organization. I would also think that organizations can go to the extent of having a reverse mentoring, where a recent college hire can mentor someone at a much senior level in an area that he or she is really good at, right? It could be a technology mentor, reverse mentoring can happen, or there can be healthy debates that we can have between two generations or people who are thinking very differently within the same organization. I think these are things that we need to show within organizations so they are able to feel, okay, this is a place where I think I can speak my mind and I can see changes if I'm going to voice out. And if the idea is good enough, then it's like we're just living it in ways of creating it as a fearless organization.
Correct. But sometimes it's also about the way each individual is different, or a manager is different. Everybody comes with their own experiences and their own behavioral styles. Now it becomes very difficult to bring unison in that aspect, to say everybody should only manage this way or lead this way, because your individual styles will come. And most times people don't leave the organization, they leave because of their managers. Yeah. So how do you look at this, your thoughts or your opinions on this particular aspect that organizations grapple with? I mean, you say at one side, these are all the important things to create a safe environment for people to thrive. But we do know that each individual, there are certain things you can't bring unity in. So how should we balance that, Janani?
I am not sure I understand your question very clearly.
It's to say, look, we're talking about creating psychologically safe environments. And then we also have each person having their own individual styles to manage, to lead. Sometimes you may have an angry manager who just has outbursts coming up, but it's just the way human beings are, because they come up with their own experiences to the jobs that they have. They bring their own experiences. Now, so one side, when this is important to create, one side you will have irrational behaviors showing up in people all the time. Now, how should we balance this off so that you're able to allow your talent to thrive?
Okay, I think it's a valid question. In my current organization, when we did the culture exercise, very recently, we concluded it, in fact, we did the exercise at 3 levels, at individual level, at a department level, and then at an organizational level. And we asked questions around what differentiates you as compared to your competitors at each of these levels, right? And we said aspects related to trust, integrity, ethics, all of those are given, like don't even have them as part of your list. So the journey of this was important, and it's a response to your question, because you specifically asked about differences existing at an individual level versus an organizational level.
Correct.
It's to say that as an individual, you could have different values. We acknowledge that. But as an organization, these are what we are finally standing for. And the expectation is each one of you align to this. If you have a misalignment, let's talk about it, right? I've seen it go both ways, Priya. In the past, when in a different place, I've seen a manager who fundamentally believed that women are not supposed to be in organizations. Like he did not want to hire women managers or women at all in his team. And he had a disconnect, saying, I don't think we should hire women, and the organization was talking more about diversity, equity, inclusion. You see, beyond a certain point, he could not connect and he left. I've seen it the other way around also. There were some managers, again, some male managers in a very male-dominated group, where they said, maybe women can't do this, we will just identify these roles for them. Then it was more about educating them to on unconscious bias and bringing certain relationships that they may hold with their daughters and other female members of the family into picture. And then I've seen change happening very gradually, to the extent that they started becoming inclusion champions, not limiting to women, but for people who are different than the regular set of people that may exist, right? So to your question, again, organizational values exist as they are. Individual values can transform. Beyond a point of transformation is not happening and there is a disconnect, especially at a manager and above level. I've seen people leave, and that may be the right thing. They'll also have to find a place where they find fundamental alignment to themselves.
Correct. Yeah. Well said, Janani. Thanks for taking that question and also seeking clarity on what we were trying to achieve. One final question to you, Janani, is you have, as we started off, we said you are a person who owns different hats, HR leader, you're a yoga enthusiast and music teacher. So a lot of these things are all contributing to your diversity. And I've seen people sometimes get afraid of exploring diversity, because it obviously takes time and investment to give diversity, and it's better off to just focus if it's just between work and some families. So they don't experience diversity in that way that some of us do. So how should people think about or cultivate this habit of adopting diversity without fear?
Yeah, it's a very important question to explore in these times again.
Correct.
I'll bring up a report that I read last year. The Forbes Talent Trends report was calling out that in 100-year life, which could happen due to medical advancements, careers could span over 60 years.
Correct.
And then we know the fact that we cannot have the same career for 60 years, which means we will need to explore multiple things. So this makes the business case very clear that we need to explore multiple things. Now, the multiple things can be in a particular area of work or in multiple areas of work.
Right.
For me, it was natural because I come from a music family and music was taught to me from childhood. And at some stage, I've said, I'm going to just add more. I mean, I'm going to water this plant a little more and grow it into a tree. And it's growing simultaneously. And I've seen advantages of music coming over my work and my work coming over music. Like I take management concepts and teach my music students. And I take teamwork from music and teach my team. So it's just a fine balance that I'm able to bring in. Now, because we have established the business case as to why learning is important and multiple varieties. Now, we'll come to multiple varieties. I think a human brain is used less than 1%, or that's what I have read.
Correct.
Then the 99% is totally unused, isn't it? So some of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, what is it that when I look at and wonder when somebody does?
Correct.
And that could be an area where one may want to explore and diversify, right? Like I've always felt that somebody does an art completely out of their own self, right? Like they are not doing copy drawing. That fascinates me to no end. Maybe that's an area where I can dirty my hands, try out, and I'm not going to lose anything. It's just going to be an art that I will learn separately. So the first point is we're not going to lose anything. The second part is whatever fascinates me can convert into a hobby. And at some time, hobby can convert into a passion. And you never know, passion could become a profession sometime. So I've seen the transition also happen in multiple people. Like I've seen people who were working full-fledged, but have completely taken on to become a yoga instructor. I've seen that happen. Or we have a lot of examples of comedians, stand-up comedians, or actors who are doing different things in life, but they found their calling in this. And that's not the end either. There may be 2-3 other things that we may find. I think it's about allocating that an hour to myself, and in that 1 hour in myself, for myself, I think people can explore different areas. But after a certain point, when there is conviction saying this is a path I want to take, then spending an hour in that particular art every day is very important. Yeah.
Wonderful. I mean, it also tells me that if you one is of course becoming aware of what really excites you, and then keep experimenting with it either as a hobby or then slowly moving it to your passion and all of that. But all of this requires time and support. I mean, sometimes without a healthy support system that helps you to nurture yourself, everything becomes a little unreachable. How do you have that, Janani? How do you create that support system? Because it's not about there existing a support system. It's also about being vocal about how we want to. So how do you play the fine balance there, Janani?
So in my case, I have had conversations with people that are in my day-to-day life. In my home, I live with my husband and my daughter. I tell them that these are important for me and these give me happiness. So I will need to find time, and most probably I have not. What I do is I align my calendar with my daughter's. Right? Like when she has a class, I do something that I'm passionate about. So my time with her is not compromised. My husband has something on a Saturday. Around the same time, I allocate whatever is my passion. So the family time is not compromised. So these are some flexibilities that I have tried to create. Additionally, I've tried to create time by waking up early and living a very focused life, I must say, Shripriya. I do not have Netflix or Prime, or I do not have any of those. I think it's just about us becoming very clear as to what is it that's important for us in life. What will we look back at our life and feel proud about? What will I inspire my next generation or people who are looking around and make them become something else that they did not think of earlier? I think these are questions, if we ask, we will get answers to ourselves. And that may lead us to take certain actions that are bold, that are unconventional, and make certain seeming, I mean, you can call them sacrifices, but they may not be sacrifices in the long run. You might watch a movie today, you may not remember about it 20 years later. You learn an art, you may still remember it 20 years later. So it's about the weight that we give for some of these items, and see how we want to spend our time as well, because time is finite.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very well said. And thanks for sharing and providing clarity, Janani, in terms of how you could potentially balance some of the distractions that are keeping us very excited today. If we have the clarity of purpose, then it helps us to understand that it's not about instant gratification, but it's about delayed gratification that we need to focus on, right? So
Yeah.
I want to say I want to say something nice to you, Janani. It is all about, I find that clarity of purpose in you. There is a sense of, as you said, groundedness that perhaps your yoga practice has brought about to you. All of this culminating into something I can see that you are going after the most important pursuits and also wanting to make a difference to people around. So it's connecting Janani to her ecosystem, and I can see you're in that path.
Thank you.
So I want to say thank you for, for being an inspiration to others. And I'm also very grateful that you patiently took through different questions that we had in this conversation, and you were able to provide some levels of clarity to each one of them. So thank you very much, Janani.